Prontissimo, pronto, prontissimo.
Prontíssimo. Olá, eu Jessica, and today I'm going to introduce you to Michael. He's an American guy that came to Portugal and made this his home. Can you introduce yourself a little bit?
Yes. Olá, pessoal.
Olá, pessoal.
So I'm Michael. As Jessica has kindly said, I am an American guy who has made Portugal my home for the past 4 years now, more or less. Time flies. And it's a pretty good place to be. This is the middle of December, and we're sitting outside in the sun. It's not bad.
I think it's 16 degrees.
Yeah, I'm still a little bit rusty with my my centigrade, but it's something like that, 16, 25, 20,
What brought you to Portugal?
So what brought me to Portugal was many things. So it was actually, in a way, a lot of boxes that were ticked, that Portugal ticks, in terms of weather, safety, being in Europe, access to the ocean, nature, already speaking some Portuguese before I got here, good cost of living, very good visa program and residency program. But specifically, I was doing a startup related to travel, and the travel industry in Portugal has been booming the past few years.
You said that you already spoke Portuguese. How come?
Yeah, so I studied a bit in university, and then I studied abroad in Brazil for 6 months, which was good for my Brazilian Portuguese, not so good for my European Portuguese, but yes. So that was like over 15 years ago, so long before I got here.
I think one of the things I admire the most about you is that you do speak the language. And like when I meet someone like you, it's like, oh, you did the work. Like even if it's not perfect, the idea is not perfect. It's like really being able to express yourself. I think you do that a lot.
Yeah, it's definitely not perfect, but it's a work in progress.
Essa é a forma de olhar para as coisas.
Yeah. I've also been a little bit lazy about improving it, I have to say, the past couple of years, because the locals, especially in Lisbon, are actually really good at English, and you don't necessarily need it all the time. Which is bad for practicing. But yeah, to me, it's like if you're going to live somewhere, you should try to speak some of the local language, because you're going to understand the culture so much more. You're going to make more friends. People are going to find you more. They're going to know that you respect their culture more, and thereby they're going to like and respect you more as well. And it just opens up doors that are otherwise closed.
First thing that you said that Portugal checked the box was weather and safety. So tell me a little bit about the weather here. How have you experienced?
Well, again, according to you, it's 16 degrees centigrade, and we're in the middle of December. Sitting outside, we have a view of the ocean and mountains, so it's pretty nice here, I would say. However, I will say, there are some myths about Portugal, and the climate can be a little bit tricky, because while it is fairly warm year-round, and in central and southern Portugal, you're not going to see snow or anything like that, the winter time for 3 to 4 months of the year actually is pretty cold, especially indoors. So it will get down to 15, 14, 13, 12, which for the North Americans out there, we're talking more like, I don't know, the mid-40s, or low 40s even sometimes. And the thing is, when it's outside, it's not so bad. But when your house feels like it's the mid-40s, and you're in there 24/7 for 3 months, it starts to feel quite cold, because there's not super great, as you know, insulation in a lot of the architecture in Portugal. There's usually no central heating. So one of your first investments, if you move here close to wintertime, will probably be a bunch of space heaters that you'll be running in your house, and maybe some blankets or a jacket.
Or you get AC.
AC. Oh, you could get an AC. Ar-condicionado.
Or lareira. Or you get
Lareira.
Lareira, não sabes?
Lareira, no.
A fireplace.
Lareira, and I have a lareira. Yeah, but I don't think it works. But yeah.
Have you tried it?
I'm a little scared to try it, actually. I might burn the whole building down. But yeah. Or a lareira. Yeah.
So bring your jacket, basically. It's great, but bring your jacket, because the construction here doesn't think much about the weather.
Yeah, I mean, if you're lucky enough to find a really new refurbished place, which are also quite pricey, you might get central heating. But don't count on it. The majority, especially in central Lisbon, where it's a little bit cooler and more trendy and old school kind of Portugal feel, it's not very likely you'll have good insulation or heat.
How is it, the market here? Is it hard? Is it easy? It's very expensive? It's not? What could we expect a little bit?
Yeah,
your experience.
If you're talking about the major cities like Porto and Lisbon, yeah, the market's pretty crazy, as I'm sure you know, especially in central Lisbon. So it's gotten very hot the past probably 6, 7, 8 years, but especially the past couple. So right now, sort of in this post-COVID world, and everyone's trying to work remotely, there's a huge influx of people trying to move here. Airbnb originally was the major cause of kind of maybe a bubble in the housing market where everyone was trying to buy up all these old buildings in central Lisbon, refurbish them, put them on Airbnb. So then there was sort of a shortage of supply, but a lot of demand, and that's pushed the market up. So if you're thinking it's very affordable here, it is. You can get you can get a pint for like €2. You can go out and eat a really good meal for €10, a beautiful bottle of good wine for like €6. But housing, not so cheap. You might be looking at 1,200, €1,400 a month for a one bedroom if it's in a fairly decent apartment in the center of the city. So not so cheap.
Yeah. Make sure that you have AC, all right? If you're paying that.
Yes.
So this is where you come in. Like, you actually help, at this moment, you're doing some consultancy, right? To help people, like, clarify all these doubts, right?
Everybody knows that moving in general is a challenge. It's a big decision, but moving abroad to a foreign culture, country, different language, everything, that's a big decision. And most people find it somewhat stressful. So basically, I did it on my own, and I had to kind of figure everything out on my own. That was both good and bad, but it taught me a lot about the process. And now I'm trying to create a service that basically, if I rewinded back 4 years ago when I came here, would be something that I could have really used and valued, which would have helped me make the whole process easier, clearer, more transparent about what is it actually like to live here, how to do things like optimize your taxes, what is it like working here, finding jobs, starting a business, looking at real estate, dating, shopping, driving.
I love that. I think you're going to be a consultant for dating and then meet some Portuguese women.
I don't know if I'm qualified for that.
It would be like one thing, like at least in this spectrum of the visa and coming here, the legal part, that you would say like be very attentive to it. What is the thing? Like, don't fall into this or don't make a rush decision.
Well, I would say, there's various types of visas, and the laws change a bit. They've the whole process actually in some ways gotten easier because of COVID, because almost everything's online now and it's faster. But there's a lot of kind of propaganda and hype out there, especially now on certain websites and with certain service providers that are just basically making it sound like if you come here, there's no tax. And all your foreign generated income will be tax-free, at least for 10 years, under a special tax regime they have for foreigners here, and that there's 0% tax on crypto and a whole bunch of other things. And while this is partially true, like most things in life, it depends.
Too good to be true, right?
Yeah. There's some fine print and caveats, and it's not quite that simple. So you need to still definitely talk to a tax lawyer, an accountant, and look at your unique situation, because there's a lot of caveats. And if you think you're just going to suddenly have zero tax obligations in the world, especially as an American, it's probably not true. So this is one of the things we focus on is, what is the truth about the tax regime here? What are the different choices you have available to you? And once we've sort of assessed what's your profile, how can you potentially optimize, legally optimize that tax situation as well.
Was it difficult for you to manage like dealing with finances and like even just the immigration? Was it difficult for you, your own process?
It was more just a test of personal patience, and there's a bit of waiting, there's a bit of getting a number, sitting in line, waiting to be called for a few hours, and but now a lot of that has actually been removed because it's been digitized. But to be honest, it actually wasn't that hard. I noticed, I went an entrepreneurial route. So, I have a different visa type. It's a D2. And actually, that process, especially 4 years ago when it was pretty new, actually was pretty easy. It was pretty streamlined. So I didn't have too many issues. But it's really about, getting a good lawyer, a good accountant, because a lot of it here is still kind of relationship-based. If you don't have those relationships, you can find yourself in a long waiting time with a lot of bureaucracy. If you come with the right person and everyone's friendly with each other, oh, yeah, hey, how are you, Alex? Things speed up a lot. So.
Okay, so that actually comes to the part of about a little bit how Portuguese people are, right? Everybody says I hear so many people of my students oh, the pace in Portugal is so wonderful. Everything seems slower, I can relax and I can breathe. But I'm there's a downside to that if you come from a culture that is more aggressive. So what did you feel a little bit of a cultural shock?
Yeah, to be honest, my first probably year and a half, 2 years here, I was very focused on my startup and making it work. So I was in a very type A, driven mode, very kind of American kind of legacy there of gotta get things done. And if you're too much of that in a culture like Portugal, you'll find yourself running into roadblocks because it doesn't really fit in with the vibe of the local culture. People are chill here. They do get things done, but kind of at their own pace. Like, do not slack on the basic formalities or pleasantries. Like, if you're walking into a place and you need help, don't just come up and say, hey, I need help with da-da-da-da-da. You might find that they're very slow to even look up and acknowledge your presence. But if you walk in and you say, bom dia, tudo bem, how are you? How's it going? Ask a little question, make some chit-chat. All of a sudden, the attitude completely changes. So you gotta, be a bit patient.
You need to
Take
learn
a deep
this word.
breath.
Esperar.
Esperar.
Wait a second. Esperar.
Espera, calma.
Calma.
Sometimes you really don't want to be calm, but you got to just learn. Calma.
Is it easy to raise money in Portugal?
No.
So it's not that easy to raise money.
No, it's quite difficult. Yeah, I wouldn't put this as my first choice if you're looking to raise money. Now, if you're a remote worker and you're already kind of set up and you can work from anywhere in the world, this is a fantastic place. But if you're looking to build a startup that needs to raise funding, yeah, you're probably better off in like a London and Amsterdam or in the U.S., etc. Although it's a very good place to find talented workers and find good deals on certain things like office space, etc., and good developers. Like there's a lot of talent here at a good price as well. But if you're trying to raise money, there's not a huge ecosystem yet of that. Then I would also say that yes, you can surf and there's ocean everywhere, but the water is cold. So
yes.
Yeah, be comfortable surfing in a wetsuit because you're not going to have almost any opportunity to surf without the wetsuit.
Yeah. We are not the Mediterranean. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
The best you can get is to go to the south, where I'm from.
But I would say the other thing is, Portugal's it's a little bit undiscovered and rawer than you're talking about traveling to the Algarve. A lot of people think about then traveling into Spain because it's pretty close.
Yeah.
And Portugal's got its own vibe. It still has a little bit of an undiscovered, more natural vibe than Spain. It's very different than Spain. I find a lot of people comparing it a lot to Spain. It is Iberia, but the cultures are different. People here speak much better English. You'll see that the movies here are not actually dubbed. They're subtitled. Everything's subtitled, TV, all of that. So I think that also helps the English level. But if you come here and you do speak Spanish, almost all the Portuguese will understand, and you can get around speaking Spanish, but I don't recommend it. It's not the fastest way to make friends here. There's still a little bit of a friendly rivalry with Spain, and so if you're going to switch out of, or if you don't know Portuguese, I'd probably fall back on English over Spanish.
I think that's the thing. I think it's about the part that you were speaking about in the beginning of the respect. It's wonderful. If this is the only thing you can speak, this is good. You're trying to communicate to the closest thing that you can go, but try to learn the basics of hola. Even if you're Spanish and you come to Portugal, at least learn hola instead of hola.
And tudo bem.
Tudo bem. Just go for the little basics of por favor.
Yeah, faz favor.
Se faz favor. Não faz mal.
Não faz mal.
Que isso?
Oh, now you're getting fancy, yeah.
Que isso?
Que isso?
Tá tudo bem. Tá tudo bem.
Tudo bem.
Só um minuto.
Pá. Just learn pá. And then you can say anything.
Anything.
And just drop a pá at the end and you're going to sound very local.
Or if you want to be very friendly, just say pois. And the old ladies complaining about something like pois.
Which can basically mean anything.
Anything, exactly. And if you learn these little cues, already makes you feel more integrated because oh, they're trying. This is so good. You're trying. So final advice for anyone that wants to move to Portugal in 2022.
Well, I would say first of all, give yourself at least 3 months to get all the documents and paperwork in order, and it's much better to do that in your home country. So just note that if you're in a hurry. But I would never suggest especially moving to a place, not just visiting, but moving without first doing a dry run. Meaning come here for 2 weeks, get an Airbnb, see if you have any friends around, stay with a local if you can, do some traveling, and basically mock up your life here. Look at where you could be working from. What's the commute like? Go buy some groceries. What's the food like? What's the pricing like? Go out. What's it like to go out and have fun? What kind of cultural venues are there? Mm-hmm. If you're looking at schools for children, talk to some people that have their children in foreign schools. Don't just read things on the internet, because moving to a place is very much it's like picking a life partner in a way. It's not just a profile online or just boxes that need to be ticked. You need to actually meet the person and see what's the chemistry, what's the vibe, how does it make you feel. So I would definitely say budget some time and money to actually come here and test it out yourself. Boom. But you should come to Portugal because it's pretty awesome.
Yeah, even to travel.
Yeah. So it's a good life. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't.
Muito obrigada.
Obrigado.
See the difference? You said obrigado, and you said obrigado, which is amazing because you took the O like we do.
Yeah.
Obrigado. And I say muito obrigada.
Yeah, well, obrigado pela oportunidade para falar sobre este país tão bonito, Portugal.
Oh, antes de irmos embora, se tivesse de descrever Portugal em 2 palavras, quais é que seriam?
Oh, difícil. 2 palavras. Lindo
Lindo. Portugal é lindo.
e tranquilo.
E tranquilo.
See, I'm speaking Spanish. You see, tranquilo.
Tranquilo.
This is
That's
another.
good. You did good.
This is another issue is that if you speak both Spanish and Portuguese, keeping them straight in your head as a foreigner, where neither one's your native language, can also be a bit of a challenge. I find myself every now and then throwing in Spanish words and vice versa. It is, in my opinion, though. It's like French, Spanish, and Italian just like thrown into a blender, and you just kind of like come out with Portuguese.
There's a definition of Portuguese.
And like bonjour, bon dia, more Brazilian Portuguese, bom dia, bonjour, and then it's got a bit of the Italianness, especially Brazilian Portuguese, to the inflections, but then grammatically, and if you look at it, it looks very similar to Spanish, so it's kind of
Oh, you were saying something super interesting to me yesterday when we were just talking about how we were going to do this, and you're telling me that the first time you arrived in Portugal, you thought everybody was speaking a language.
Yes. So speaking of language, yeah. So there's maybe that's another misconception is that Brazilian Portuguese is the same as European Portuguese or Portuguese. And yes, they're very much mutually intelligible, especially for native speakers of the languages, but they are quite different. They're quite different. So just like maybe Spanish from Europe versus like Mexican Spanish versus Argentinian Spanish are very different. When I got here, I was more or less fluent, proficient in Brazilian Portuguese, and so I was walking around expecting to hear people sounding the same way that I was accustomed to, and I kept hearing this like very deep, powerful way of speaking that of Portugal that I wasn't accustomed to, and I thought, for about a week, I just thought there was a lot of Eastern Europeans, like Slavics and Russians here, and I was really impressed that they could all speak really good Portuguese. And I was like, man, there's so many Russians here. And then one day somebody was like, no, those are just locals. And I realized, those are all Portuguese people. It's just the language sounds very different than what I was anticipating. So there's definitely kind of accent-wise, a bit of an Eastern European flair to me. It's like Brazilian Portuguese thrown in with something a bit Slavic.
It's the ish. It's like we do so much ish, like the
the ish.
Sh.
Although Rio de Janeiro has that too with the Carioca accent, a bit of the ish, but it doesn't have quite the force to the palavras.
Thank you so much. Muito obrigada.
De nada.
If anyone, Michael is actually helping now people moving to Portugal. If you have any questions, just comment below and let us know. And below you can find his contact details.
Perfect. All right, and you're more than welcome to browse my site or give me a shout. Happy to help. So fica bem-vindo.
Bem-vindo, beijinhos, tchau, tchau.
Tchau.